Well, that's a rock star welcome for you here in the Brisbane Powerhouse. It's wonderful to be here this evening for the second consecutive year at the Festival of Tibet for myself, and once again I'll be recording this conversation for my radio program Big Ideas on ABCRN. The program can be heard Monday to Thursday nights at 8, and this talk will be coming up in the next, say, week or two. We haven't found an exact date, but it won't be far off. It's a real honour to have this rare opportunity to sit down and speak with and hear from the Honourable Sikyong Dr. Lobsang Sangay, the President of Tibetan administration, and he'll be talking with me about a range of issues, including his vision and hopes for Tibet, the challenges facing him and his country, and the progress being made toward autonomy for Tibet, or at least the prospect first of all, of opening up dialogue with China, among many other things. He visits Australia, as you know, as global geopolitics continue to be in a state of flux with an impending UK election in the shadow of Brexit. There's been the first 100 days of the Trump administration. I think today might be the 100th day. We were talking about that before. We continue to witness, of course, the rise of China and the omnipresent impact of climate change, that latter issue being of particular significance for Tibet. How do the struggles of the Tibetan people sit within that global context? We'll be talking about that as well. But please welcome the President of the Tibetan administration, Dr. Lobsang Sangay.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Just because I'm wearing traditional dress does not mean that I'll be singing. I think that clap was more expectation that I would sing. If I sing, I think the Brisbane very good weather will be changed to a major rainfall. So, two Tenzing performed in this traditional dress, so I'm here to speak, not sing.
Your second trip to Australia, is that right?
That's true, yes.
Have you been to Brisbane before?
Yes, actually, when I was flying back, I had to stop. So the Tibetans were kind enough to book a room near the hotel. So I got out of the hotel, gave a talk to our Australian friends and Tibetan friends, and then went back to India last time. That's 4 years ago.
Okay.
So it's good to be back.
And this is a quick trip as well, because you're off to New Zealand
early morning.
Tomorrow in the morning.
5:45, they say, 5:45 a.m. So 5:45 a.m. will be midnight in India, so I'll be deprived of sleep from jet lag point of view, yeah.
Oh, you look sprightly nonetheless. And you're coming back to Australia later in the year for a more extensive tour of the country.
That's true. In August, I'll be going to Melbourne, Canberra, and Sydney. So I will be making rounds of Canberra as well.
Ooh.
So
well,
let's
good luck
see
with,
how many.
with Canberra.
I'm pretty sure all the people in the government would like to meet with me, shake hands with me, and it won't affect their consultation fees with the Chinese government.
Things didn't go too well last time when you requested a meeting with the then Foreign Minister Bob Carr, did they? Although you did meet with him to some extent.
There was a karmic meeting. So when I landed in Melbourne, there was an early morning call, radio call, and I was asked whether I'm going to meet then Foreign Minister Bob Carr or not. I said, most likely not. But then when I went to the Parliament building of the Australia, so as we took the elevator, when the elevator opened on the first floor, who came in? Bob Carr. So someone introduced me, and I just say hi. I didn't shake his hand because less is cost his consultation fees. So moved on. But in the evening, as we were coming back, so we saw a group, one whole entourage coming from that side, and I saw a lady almost smiling towards our direction. That was the Prime Minister of Australia.
Oh, really?
So someone came and whispered to her, and then smile froze halfway. But I didn't mind. I thought, even though they are in a very difficult position, I know the then Prime Minister, she was a very nice lady, kind in heart. But given the pressure from the Chinese government, she had to avoid. But it was a karmic meeting. So in the end, I said I met them in a karmic sense.
Yeah. I mean, we are laughing about it, but of course China wields a lot of influence, strategic and economic, in a country like Australia. That makes it difficult for you to broach with governments like the Australian government the issue of Tibet and Tibetan autonomy. Is it possible at all for you to get foreign governments like the Australian government to change its mind, to at least meet with you and have conversations about this issue?
Actually, if you go by shared principles, then it should not be a problem. For example, President Obama and George W. Bush and the other presidents, Clinton, they all have met with His Holiness Dalai Lama. Especially President Obama, White House made it very clear that they support one China policy, but at the same time they support middle way approach of His Holiness Dalai Lama. That is to seek genuine autonomy within China and within the framework of the Chinese constitution. So the American government says they support one China policy, sovereignty and territorial integrity of China, but they also support middle way approach. So they don't see contradiction at all. So if Australian government follows the same principle, then there is no contradiction between meeting us and supporting one China policy. And also, Australia was also a former colony. So when it was seeking its independence, it got the support from many quarters from around the world. And the Constitution of Australia is founded on democracy, human rights, and freedom. So what we are seeking is not just support us. What we are seeking is Australian people, Australian government should live up to their own basic principles on which Australia was founded and basic principles on which the Australian Constitution is enshrined. That's the value we expect. So yes, one should engage with China, one should do business with China, you should make profit, but often the case China makes more profit from you than other way around. But nonetheless, you should do business, at the same time stand up for your principle, that's all.
You've now been in your role for 5 years. How difficult has it been for you to fill the shoes of the Dalai Lama in terms of taking over his political responsibilities?
That's the biggest shoes one can try to fill in. It's very difficult. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the life and soul of Tibetan people. He is the Nobel laureate. He is the advocate of compassion and peace around the world. But it was his vision that he wants to separate the church and the state in 2011. It's just that I happened to get elected around the same time. So I was given the responsibilities to handle political and administrative matters. All I'm trying to do is, fulfill his vision and, in some sense, help him. But this is personal because, often I've taken ride with His Holiness Dalai Lama. So it just struck to me that for 60-some years, he took the political leadership at the age of 16. Now it's 82. For all these years, any problem a Tibetan had, or a Tibetan people, or Tibet as a nation had, everybody rushed to him to complain. All the sufferings he had to listen. And as a spiritual leader, more so. People around the world, billionaires and millionaires, go and complain to him, share their sufferings. But then, who does he share his own anxiety and anxiousness or suffering? And then, how does he handle it, Then I thought, at least I'm that part or the piece which try to control or handle problems of the Tibetan people. At least less problems go to him. At least I am of service, that much of service to him. So that's, for me, from karmic point of view, that's a real blessing. That's an opportunity. Even though this job is difficult, even though this job is struggle, nonetheless, every day I work hard. I feel I'm helping His Holiness a little bit, I'm helping Tibetan people a little bit, and I'm also fulfilling my parents' wish and legacy that we move on and we march on for the cause of Tibet. So that gives me peace of mind. Other than it's a freedom struggle, it's apt struggle. On a daily basis, it's difficult. Also, I fly economy class, that does not help.
And since you were elected, you've been trying very hard to engage China in dialogue about the middle way approach that you just spoke of that can be accommodated within the Chinese constitution. What can you say about that? How much success have you had in managing to convince China to come to the table? Well, I think I know the answer to that question. It hasn't been much success.
Yes.
But do you feel like you're making progress toward that first goal?
From the very beginning, in my first term, expectation was a bit low because then two envoys with the Dalai Lama have had 9 rounds of dialogue from 2002 to 2010. But from January 2010 to June of 2012, for 2.5 years, same envoys tried to meet with the counterpart, Chinese counterpart, and have dialogue. They did not succeed. In the end, they resigned. So then we kind of thought it's not going to happen very quickly, especially Xi Jinping's his first term. During first term, you always think of consolidating your power for your re-election. So expectation was a bit low, and as expected, not much progress has been made. But anyone who comes to meet with His Holiness Dalai Lama or with us, any Chinese journalists, scholars, track to, we try to pass on the message that from our side, we are ready anytime, anywhere to have dialogue, to resolve the issue of Tibet peacefully and non-violently. But let's hope by the end of this year, there will be changes in the Chinese leadership. By early next year, March of 2018, National People's Congress will meet, and the 7 or 5 number of leaders will come out. Hopefully, in Xi Jinping's second term, he will look at Tibet issue as one of those low-hanging fruits that he can touch and he can address it, because that will be good for his legacy and also good for China's image. You know, as you said, they want to be a global power. To want to be global power is all right, but you have to earn respect from the international community. You can only earn respect if you respect the Tibetan people.
What does a middle way for Tibetan autonomy look like? Because there are many Tibetans who want complete independence from China as a separate independent nation, as they say Tibet once was, but you're not advocating that. So what does the greater self-determination that would occur within the middle way look like for Tibetans?
No, historically, Tibet was an independent country. In fact, a treaty signed in 8/21/23 clearly says Tibetans will be happy in the great country of Tibet, Chinese will be happy in the great country of China, signed by Chinese representative and Tibetan representative. Even China has recognized Tibet as an independent country. Now it is under occupation now, and Tibetans are repressed. So one section of Tibetan people are saying, historically Tibet was independent, hence it's our birthright to be independent. But His Holiness Dalai Lama and Tibetan administration, what we say is, let's be reasonable. For China, sovereignty and territorial integrity and unity of motherland is non-negotiable. One China policy is non-negotiable. We say we accept that. Now, but Chinese constitution says these are the rights Tibetan have, these are the autonomy that Tibetan have. If that is the case, if you implement your own laws as enshrined in Chinese constitution, we will take that as genuine autonomy. Hence, we are willing not to seek separation from China if we are given genuine autonomy. So this is the middle of occupation, repression, and independence and separation. So right in the middle, as stipulated in the Chinese constitution, give us those autonomy and we will accept.
A little bit like the one country, two systems approach that applies to Hong Kong and Macau. Is that, as you'd see the arrangement being, similar to in Tibet?
It's a little less than that. One country, two system, the basic law of Hong Kong, comes under Article 31 of the Chinese Constitution. As far as Tibetans seeking genuine autonomy comes more under Minority Nationality Act of China of 1984. So yes, something like one country, two system, but less than that.
So why have China been willing to give Hong Kong and Macau a degree of autonomy, even though we know that from time to time they interfere in Hong Kong and Macau as well, but have been unable and unwilling to do so with Tibet? What is your explanation for that?
You know, I had 6-hour stopover in Bangkok airport. So I was very tempted to go out and venture into the city in Bangkok. But then when of course we all know the bookkeepers, publishers of Bangkok disappeared. Chinese publishers, remember, disappeared to Hong Kong, disappeared to China. I said, I better not venture to Hong Kong because I won't be in Brisbane if that happens. So there's element of trust or mistrust, and then other is sheer discrimination, if not racism. One, it seems the Chinese leaders, they don't trust, at least the hardliners, they don't trust His Holiness Dalai Lama, they don't trust Tibetan people. They think if you give them something, they will ask more, they will demand more, or they will get out of control. Then that is proven because Hong Kong has one country, two system, Macau has, right? So Chinese government is willing to give autonomy or autonomies to Han Chinese people, to Hong Kong, to Macau, even Shenzhen, special economic zones, right? Chongqing was never a province. It was carved out of Sichuan province, right? There were 100 million people, 20 million people carved out and made into a Chongqing autonomous area. So as far as Han Chinese are concerned, they're giving autonomy right, left, and center. When it comes to Tibetans, I say, what about us? You say, yeah, you are part of the family, but you are the untrustworthy part of the family. So hence, they don't give us autonomy. So that element of discrimination, that element of racism is the problem.
So that's how you see it, as a form of ethnic discrimination, essentially.
Discrimination and racism, because when it comes to Han Chinese, they give autonomy here, they give autonomy there, all the time, right? And when it comes to Tibetans, they say, no, we can't give you because you will ask for more. But that argument is not substantiated, because we have 6 million Tibetans. They have almost 3 million PLA soldiers. PLA soldiers 20 to 40, 50 years old with automatic machine guns. So for every 2 Tibetan, there is 1 Han Chinese soldier with a machine gun. So I think they can definitely trust us, because if you have that many guns and that many tanks.
It's an extraordinary amount of muscle flexing on the part of the Chinese. I wonder whether your own activities as Tibetan president are monitored by the Chinese government. Are they monitoring your correspondence, your email? Do you know whether or not that is occurring?
All the time. As we speak, I'm sure this is taped somewhere in Beijing, Paul. So your visa to China might be denied, or you might be invited by a Chinese ambassador, and Australia has said, let's have dinner and talk over it, Paul. So you have heard the sentiments of the Chinese people. So I'm definitely monitored. For example, when I was meeting, it happens all the time. When I was meeting leader Nancy Pelosi in Washington, D.C., they got a call 15 minutes ahead of the meeting, say, you are meeting him at 4 p.m. Don't hurt the sentiments of the Chinese people. Please cancel the meeting. But the good thing is the staff members said, thank you very much. And the meeting went on. So I hope when I come in Australia, in Canberra in August, I will have similar meetings. They'll put down the phone and meet with me anyways. So that's what I expect from Australian leaders. Paul, you will help me broadcast that, yeah?
We hear a lot about the repression in Tibet today, in Australia. What is life like in Tibet for the average Tibetan today? How much or how little freedom do they enjoy? What is the degree of repression that they face at the moment?
2 recent incidents. One, His Holiness Dalai Lama was giving Kala Chakra. This is the highest form of Buddhist teaching, in January of this year. Now, thousands of Tibetans work very hard. Only 1 or 2% of Tibetans in Tibet get passport, right? At most 5%. Through sheer challenges, they got the passport. They came to Nepal. They came to India. But all of them were told, you better return to your hometown, to your village, before January 3rd, or all your subsidies will be cancelled. If your family members are working in the Chinese government or Communist Party member, their membership and jobs will be lost. So 99% of them had to rush back. I met an elderly guy. I know his nephew. He said he is safe because he is in his 80s. And he has come to India many times before, and his relationship with local officials is very good. So he stayed on. Finally, he got a call, said, in 3 days, if you don't reach inside Tibet, his house was ransacked. He said, everything will be gone. So can you imagine, 80-some years old, he had to drive to Delhi, take a flight to Kathmandu, take a flight to Lhasa. From Lhasa, he frantically called his local authorities saying, I'm here. Then only he was... So this is one example. Other example is Larungar Monastery. There are 12,000 monks and nuns in one monastery. The Chinese government ordered it will be demolished and it will be reduced to 5,000 monks and nuns. As we speak, Larungar Monastery is being demolished. Now, these people the demolition that's taking place, the huts and the thatches and the roof that they built voluntarily from their own pockets. That includes Tibetans from all walks of life, nomads, farmers, young, old, including Han Chinese, a couple of thousands of Han Chinese. They're there to seek teaching from spiritual masters. But then they want to destroy it. As we speak, they're destroying it. So there are plenty of cases, and because of destruction, 3 nuns committed suicide in Larungar. And just this year, 2 Tibetans committed self-immolation. They burned themselves. Now, 146 Tibetans have burned themselves, of which 125 have died. To give up one's life, to burn one's body, it's very painful. It's very sad. It's very tragic. One will only do it when you are so desperate. That's happening. So we discourage self-immolation because life is precious. We have urged them consistently and categorically, yet burning oneself suicide continues because the repression is so unbearable. They say, I would rather die than live. That's the situation in Tibet.
It's a terrible situation, isn't it?
Very sad.
So
very tragic.
there is no religious freedom at all in Tibet today.
Yeah, there is freedom in the sense of rituals, they allow certain things, but then overall, systematic repression is very, very clear. Because in Tibet, they have grid system. All nomads and farmers from remote places are issued a biometric ID card. Now, it sounds good, but which means everywhere you go, you have to swipe your card. So in Lhasa, every 20 meters, there's a check post. There you have to swipe your card. Now, after some time, the data will be accumulated, and they will ask you, you are from this remote area, how come you have been to 10 different places in the last 2 years? And you will be put under suspicious category and then blacklisted, and you are in deep trouble.
So they're under constant surveillance, in other words.
Oh, there's Freedom House said, and also the Journalists Without Borders, they said, it's more difficult to get into Tibet than North Korea. Freedom House report says Tibet is the least free country or place after Syria. We all know the Syria situation, Syria. After Syria, it's Tibet. So there's a grid system, there's surveillance cameras, and following you all the time. Yeah, that's the situation. It's very tragic. Yeah.
Almost impossible, I think, for foreign journalists to get into Tibet to report on these activities too, I understand.
Very difficult. And even when you're allowed, it will be a guided tour. So you will have a couple of Tibetans working for Chinese government praising Mao Zedong and saying, oh, Tibet is a socialist paradise, everybody is happy, and we are very grateful to the Chinese government. They won't allow you to travel around freely and report quite freely, yes.
Which is what the Chinese government says about Tibet, don't they? That it's a Maoist paradise.
A socialist paradise. And then we say, of course, if it is socialist paradise, allow independent journalists, international diplomats freely assess the situation, report to the international community, and we will take that report as facts, but they don't allow it. And they say, well, the Tibetans in Tibet don't want you, for example, me. And that's okay. I'm ready because I just had 2 rounds of election. I won both rounds. I'm willing to compete with any Chinese leader in the election inside Tibet, and let's see who wins. I'm pretty sure, hands down, I'll win. Not because I'm Lobsang Sangay, but because I'm a Tibetan. So Tibetan would like to have a Tibetan leader. So that's the challenge to the Chinese government. If they really want to test it, democracy is the way to go. And I'll take that challenge any day.
And the clampdown still continues against those in Tibet who decide they want to protest against certain aspects of Chinese rule or religious repression and so on?
Yes. Even if 1 or 3 Tibetans get out in the streets and shout slogans, within minutes they will be arrested and they will disappear. They go through prolonged imprisonment and torture. And I have, actually Australia has the largest number of former political prisoners from Tibet. That way, Australian government has been quite generous. If you listen to their testimonies, it's so painful. They just did a simple act of having a photograph walk in the streets and say, "Long live His Holiness Dalai Lama," you go to prison for years. And you are beaten and tortured so much that when you come out, in fact, very sick, and many die when you come out also. So they suffer a lot, you know. So there is actually no freedom at all inside Tibetans when they want to express their views.
I read a figure that over 1.2 million Tibetans have been killed since 1950, when China assumed control over Tibet. That's 1.2 million, and I think the estimated population of Tibet is around 6 million or so. Does that figure of 1.2 million sound correct to you?
Now, it's an estimated figure. So it was based on testimonies of all those Tibetans who came to India in 1950s and the recent arrivals who have come and who have reported based on their eyewitness accounts of what happened in the villages and nomadic area, things like that. So it's an estimated figure, but I think it's near the ballpark. But then what we want is independent investigators to go inside Tibet and give them access to all the villages and towns, and we can verify the figure. Having said that, when Holocaust happened in Europe, many of the Jewish victims, they went out and said, this many Jewish people died. But many people did not believe them because you are a victim, you are emotional, your figure that you are saying is not true. But almost exact same figure proved to be true later. In that sense, we do believe an estimated 1 million people have died or perished because of hunger, because of torture, because of killings. So we do believe that's the number. And that number is, I think, second highest after Angola and Sudan. I think in the whole world, victims of conflicts.
What cultural impact is the influx of China's Han people into Tibet having? Is this a form of cultural assimilation that is now going on inside Tibet? And is this migration of Han people into Tibet weakening Tibetan culture?
Definitely. There is political repression, economic marginalization, environmental destruction, and cultural assimilation. So, for example, the Chinese constitution and Chinese law says Tibetan can not only use their own language, but should be encouraged. But medium instruction after primary school, middle school, high school, even at university level is in Chinese, not in Tibetan. So they're discouraging Tibetan language. So even if you go to Tibet, signboards you see, first Chinese, then small Tibetan. Hence, the Han Chinese migration to Tibetan area is an assimilation drive. It's a long practice assimilation drive of Chinese empire. If you go to Manchuria, there are like 9 Han Chinese to 1 Manchurian. If you go to Mongolia, I think there are 8 Chinese to 2 Mongolian. If you come to Xinjiang, now I think 60% of Xinjiang is Chinese. But thankfully, for Tibet, what is saving us is our altitude and attitude. It's 4,000 meters high on average. So it will take 500 to 1,000 years of genetic adaptation for Chinese to migrate there and settle there. So they come during summer. They come during summer, and they have to live during winter. Because it's so cold. So Tibet is Tibetan majority in winter. They come in summer because it's heavily subsidized, So in Lhasa, the capital city of Tibet, I think 75, 80, maybe 90% of shops, restaurants, hotels, all businesses owned or run by Chinese. Even the taxis, even the rickshaws, and every small stalls are owned or run by Chinese. But because of altitude, it's so cold in winter, so it's saving us. So, Al Gore, we wish him well with the inconvenient truth about the global warming, but we are not a big fan of global warming.
No.
Globe can be cold as possible, as long as possible, so that we are safe from Chinese migration.
You mentioned the difference in approach that the United States government has taken to the issue of Tibetan autonomy compared to Australia, who won't even countenance the issue that Australian government basically supports the Chinese government view. How might the new Trump administration deal with the issue of Tibetan independence, do you think? I mean, One thing that's been apparent about Donald Trump is that he's not terribly fond and is critical, very much so, of the Chinese government. Might this, do you think, lead to a more aggressive stance, perhaps, by America to urge China to take greater action toward Tibetan autonomy?
All the past presidents of United States, from George Bush the father to Clinton, George W. Bush and Obama, have met with His Holiness Dalai Lama. And I hope and I believe that President Donald Trump will continue the tradition and meet with His Holiness Dalai Lama and support the Tibetan cause. That's our hope.
And meet with you?
Very unlikely. Yeah. And then we don't make the request also because we know this, the protocol and how sensitive it is. And the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, has also said that he encourages dialogue between the envoys of the Dalai Lama and Chinese counterpart or Chinese representative, that he would meet with His Holiness Dalai Lama as well. So we hope what Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has said will happen. And then President Donald Trump will also meet with His Holiness Dalai Lama.
I recently read that the Hollywood actor Richard Gere, who is a prominent supporter of Tibetan independence, has found it more difficult to get screen roles because China are not happy with his stance, and this is hindering the financing of films that he would be cast in. As a result, he's facing Richard Gere, a sort of blacklist in America, finding it incredibly difficult to get the film roles that he once did. Is this the price you pay for standing up for Tibetan independence if you are, for example, a prominent celebrity?
Richard Gere not only is facing, but he faced the pressure for almost 2 decades. When he was at his height, we all have watched Pretty Woman and All Gentlemen. So all good movies, he's a brilliant actor. But at the Oscar award ceremony, he got on the podium and spoke for Tibet. That's like 2 decades ago, right? And he was banned from Oscar ceremony since then. And then the recent stories is that, so he had difficulties getting major, blockbuster movie from major entertainment companies. So, but he has taken the indie route, independent films, and his film Norman, I believe, is doing very well. All critical reviews. So when it comes to Australia, you must watch him. Not only you're watching Richard Gere, the good-looking guy, but you are supporting Richard Gere, a Buddhist and a true friend of Tibetan people. So he is facing, he faced. But he says, look, he says, I've earned enough. I have enough fame to live with as far as Hollywood is concerned. Yeah. So what he did was he did it knowingly, and he was willing to pay the price. He has paid the price. Yeah. But that's a challenge for anyone supporting the Tibetan cause. But I admire his courage. I admire his support. So I've sat with him, and he was emailing me and texting me just recently, 3 days before coming here, and I was wishing him very well for his movie. So, he is also not just a Hollywood actor. He is a true Buddhist. He meditates and prays more than me. His posture, meditation posture, is better than me also, But he supports the Yankees in New York. I don't like. I'm from Boston. I'm a Red Sox fan. So he's Buddhist, I'm Buddhist, but when it comes to baseball, we go toe to toe, yes. We say, His Holiness Dalai Lama and your compassion can set aside, and we go Yankees better and Red Sox better.
And as we know, baseball is a form of religion in the United States.
I'm from Red Sox Nation. And a Patriots fan too, football, New England, they won Super Bowl recently. By the way, Australian cricket team came to Dharamsala.
Yes, that's right.
They asked for His Holiness' blessing, but the blessing goes very specific. The captain, Steve Smith, asked for the blessing so he can sleep better. So that was the blessing. So next day they lost the game. So
that's right.
Had they asked for blessing for the game, it would have changed the karma, But I was flying together with him from Dharamsala, Delhi. So he was wearing Red Sox baseball cap as well. Very nice guy.
So he got to sleep better as a result of meeting.
It seems so, That was the request. So blessing comes very specific,
Next time he meets the Dalai Lama, he'll know what to request.
That's right. It's Australian team's fault. It's not Dalai Lama's fault, I must say.
We're in a room tonight full of people who are obviously very supportive of Tibet and Tibetan autonomy. What can Australians in general, though, do, and what should people perhaps in the room here do to spread awareness of the types of issues that you've spoken about tonight? What in fact can we do? Is there much that we can do really to help your cause?
No, we always say one person can make the difference. For example, the Festival of Tibet, Tenzin Chogyal, single-handedly, obviously supported by Powerhouse and all the good people here, volunteers, friends, they all support him and make this festival a success. Similarly, Australian people can call their member of parliament, write to Australian newspaper or all the television, constantly be there. One person can make a difference. That's what I know.
Yeah.
So you can join Tibet support group here in Brisbane, Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra, wherever you are. Be active, participate. Tonight, by coming here, you might think, I've just come here to listen to Paul more than me. I know that. But your presence here sends a powerful message inside Tibet. Tibet inside Tibet who are in prison, who are suffering, who are listening to radio and through illegal means, and they are in fear while they listen to radio. Let's say, hey, in Brisbane, so many people turn up in the Festival of Tibet, and they feel good. They say, okay, whatever we are doing is right. There are good people in Australia who are supporting us, who are with us. So every person who is in this room sends a powerful message of encouragement and hope to Tibetans inside Tibet, and also a small message to Beijing. Tibetans are here, we are with them. You might be more rich and more powerful, but the truth will prevail. Rugged spirit of Tibetan people, resilient spirit of Tibetan people will prevail in the end, because we are with you. So that's the message to Beijing.
I'm interested in your personal journey to the position of president.
That's not that interesting.
Well, you're a Harvard Law School graduate. Up till 2011, you were the senior fellow at the East Asian Legal Studies program at Harvard Law School. A comfortable job, an interesting job, intellectually stimulating job. Why did you choose to move into politics, especially given the politics is one thing, but especially given the very unique challenges of your job, the difficulties that you face?
I think it's less politics, more freedom struggle is a cause. So when you hear and read about the tragedy in Tibet, the sufferings they're undergoing, and I have my relatives, we all hear that. And the self-immolations, Tibetans burning themselves, committing suicide, nomads and farmers protesting against, mining, hydropower, all that on a daily basis. And then since young, your parents always tell you how Tibet was lost, how it was occupied. And then our greatest leader, His Holiness Dalai Lama, how much hard work he does on a daily basis. When you read all these things, my contribution is not even sacrifice. My contribution of going back to India, leaving my job in America and taking these responsibilities pale in comparison to what Tibetans in Tibet are doing, what His Holiness Dalai Lama has done for this many years. So just a contribution from my side, and just continuing my parents' wish and legacy. They fought against Chinese because my father was a former guerrilla also. My uncle was also. They fought and they were willing to fight. And at least what I have to do is non-violently. And what I have to do is show up and talk, not with guns, but with whatever little skill that I have. So pales in comparison. So giving up American life, giving up Starbucks coffee for Indian chai was more difficult than the American life for India. Yeah.
Your father was a monk who fled Tibet in 1959. Is that right?
That's true. Yeah.
And your uncle your uncle was killed, and your aunt committed suicide as a result of the Tibetan repression. And you were born in a refugee camp after your parents fled to India. All of this would tend to explain to me your desire to want to play a role in change. Do you think that, in a sense, this struggle has been in your blood really pretty much since you were born?
again, Paul, my story is nothing different from any in this
Yeah.
room or who's listening. All have been through the same experience. Yes, my uncle was airdropped inside Tibet and he died. My aunt found the torture of my other uncle so unbearable that she committed, she jumped into a river and she was pregnant and she had a young child and two of them, and one dragged himself out of her grab, and then he lived, and I met him, he's in India. Then the other one did jump and then died, So when you hear all the stories, you just feel that I should do something. And
Yeah.
my father's last wish was that he returns to Tibet and he died there. So he always said, I want to die in Tibet. And I said, my father, I said, your wish will be fulfilled. And it was unfulfilled. And I had uncle from my father's side who I used to talk to from time to time. And he used to say, I am your last family member from your father's side. And he always said, we will meet before I die. And I said, of course we will meet. But end of 2008, phone call stopped. Then I learned that he also passed away. So, but we have to fulfill the dreams of our parents and the aspirations of Tibetans inside Tibet. They all are saying, we want to see His Holiness the Dalai Lama return to Tibet.
Yeah.
We want to see basic freedom of Tibetan people. Till those aspirations and dreams are fulfilled, one must work hard, one must contribute. So I'm that small part of that effort.
Yeah.
So every Tibetan is making that effort. Tenzin Chogyal here, everyone is making the effort. So, I'm just doing a contributing factor.
You have not been permitted to go back to Tibet either.
No,
I understand you wanted to go back to Tibet after your father died to pay your respects in Tibet. You requested permission to go to Tibet from the Chinese authorities, did you?
Yeah, in a way I was promised to go to Tibet. So I flew to Beijing. And then after several days, I made the request. I said, now, can I go to Tibet? They said, no, they don't have enough people to receive me in Lhasa. And you're talking 1.3 billion Chinese in China. Right? They have not enough people to receive me in Lhasa. And I was quite personal and emotional. I said, it's my 1-year anniversary of my father's passing away. So I just want to fly in the morning, light a butter lamp, offer a candle in Chokang, that's the holy shrine, and come back in the evening. That officer said, we don't have enough people to receive you in Lhasa. Then I got the message, this is I'm dealing with. This is the wall I'm facing. They're so unemotional. They're so cold, and in some ways ruthless. I'm making a personal request, and then they won't allow me. So it was just 3 hours flight from Beijing to Lhasa. And my wish remains unfulfilled, and my father's passing away. It's every person's desire is to go and light a lamp in your own parents' memory. I have not been able to do that.
So you have both that personal experience, plus you also have the experience professionally in your current position of dealing with China as well, and of not getting very far, it has to be said. Do you despair? What do you draw on to stop you feeling despairing that no progress is being made?
Well, if His Holiness the Dalai Lama can work so hard for 82 years, it's my 6th year. But also, I think great Indian scholar Shantideva said, if you can solve a problem, why worry about it? If you cannot solve a problem, what is the point of worrying about it? So I worry less, I focus on my efforts. So also in Buddhism, sense of impermanence. You are born, you die. No one can escape death. So as long as you live, you do something for other people. And also the freedom lost and freedom gained is part of the same road. Freedom ends here, freedom regains here. But the most difficult job is to connect the dots there. So I'm one of those dots which is connecting. So I hope I'm more at the end of the dot than at the beginning of the dot, So you keep connecting the dot, our day will come.
Yeah.
That's absolutely certain. As sun shines in the morning, there will be freedom in Tibet. That I'm absolutely certain. My job is to keep connecting. When the final connection happens, hope I will be there. If not, also, my father's wish will be fulfilled, and I'll be very happy. So at the end of your life in Buddhism, we all die. And when you die, when you look back, you should not die with regrets.
Yeah.
You should die thinking, I tried my best, but I've groomed my daughter and granddaughter to be a freedom fighter, then I die peacefully. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah.
So it's the beginning, it's the end, and I hope I'm almost there at the end. So it'll happen during my term, then that will be karmic. So that will happen, that I'm absolutely certain.
Tibet is the roof of the world, the third pole, some call it. There are around 46,000 glaciers on the plateau of Tibet, but they are melting due to global warming. The temperature in the region has increased by an alarming 1.3 degrees. If the glaciers continue to melt at the rate they are melting now, then 2/3 of them will be gone by 2050. They're very sobering figures. Is enough being done since the COP21 talks, do you think, to address this issue and the impact it's having on Tibet?
Yes,
and the world, of course.
Yes. Supporting Tibet is not just about 6 million Tibetans. It's about the region, whole of Asia and the whole world. Because after Antarctica and Arctic, Tibet has the highest reserve of ice. And the difference is when ice or melt in Antarctica and Arctic, it goes to ocean. But as far as Tibetan glaciers are concerned, when they melt, it forms fresh water, turns into rivers. So all the major rivers of Asia, Yangtze River, Yellow River, the cradle of Chinese civilization, start from Tibet. Brahmaputra River, lifeline for Asia, lifeline for Bangladesh and northeast of India, flow from Tibet. Mekong River, Salween River, Irrawaddy River, for whole of ASEAN countries. The famous Mekong River of Vietnam Delta flow from Tibet. And Indus River, Satluj River, all flow from Tibet. The fresh water starting from Tibet provides water to 1.4 billion people in that area.
Yeah.
Now, the challenge is this. China has 19% of the world population, but only 11 or 12% of fresh water, which means already 400 million Chinese or more are facing water scarcity. Situation in Bangladesh is worse, situation in India is worse, situation in Pakistan is worse. Now you are looking at almost 50% of the world population depending on Tibet as a water tower, and 50% of the world population is facing water scarcity. Hence, some experts have said before wars were fought over land, now wars are fought over oil, hence Middle East is in crisis. Soon wars will be fought over water, and Tibet is the water tower. Now, with Chinese migration into Tibet and the urbanization of Tibetan area, Tibetan plateau, is increasing the temperature within Tibet. Hence, glaciers are melting faster. So you're right, some scientists have said 50% of glaciers of Tibet is already gone. Of the remaining 46,000 glaciers, you cited the number of 2050, but 2100, 75% of 46,000 glaciers will disappear. Now you are looking at a major, major crisis. Half the population of the world with 75% of the glaciers melting away. Now what will happen in that situation? Wars are very likely in that situation. Hence, restoring the status of Tibetan people as the steward of the Tibetan plateau is very, very important as far as climate is concerned, as far as environment of the region is concerned.
Absolutely. The permafrost, for example, is storing carbon in vast amounts of carbon. If it degrades, the carbon is released, further exacerbating climate change. And the other related issue, of course, is the damming of the rivers in Tibet. I think all of the main rivers in Tibet have been essentially dammed by the Chinese, haven't they?
That's true. Not just 1 or 2 dams, 10, 20 dams per river. Number one, they want to control the flow of rivers. So if necessary, eventually they can divert the rivers into China from all the neighboring countries. So number 3 is they want to generate hydropower, sell hydropower and make money. Now, here we are drinking this water, we all pay to buy. Tibetans have been providing water to 1.4 billion people. We never charge them even a penny. So had we charged For centuries, we would have been the richest country in the whole world. But Tibetans were Buddhist, generous. We shared water with the rest of the world. But China is damming them, you know, and controlling the flow of rivers. And also, damming of rivers, from military point of view, is also very dangerous weapon. For example, if you open the dam or you break the dam, when water gushes through, it will sweep all the roads and railways and villages downstream. If your enemy has crossed to this side, if everything is washed out, these soldiers from the other country will face major challenges because you won't have food supply, you won't have any supplies, right? So the dams can be a major weapons also. Some army general told me. So in that sense, damming of rivers is taking place. Not just that, Tibetan nomads and farmers are protesting because there are some sacred mountains and mining is taking place. 123 different kinds of minerals. Iron, it's not just Australia, Tibet also has iron. And gold, copper, borax, uranium. Trillions of dollars worth of the minerals are there. All this are exploited. Even sacred mountains are not spared. Trees are cut from sacred mountains, mining taking place from sacred mountains, and Tibetans, nomads and farmers are protesting out in the street just to protect their sacred mountain.
Well, they're being moved off the land, aren't they, the nomads in Tibet?
Yes, according to Human Rights Watch, around 2 million nomads are forcibly moved to urban areas from nomadic areas.
So what can you tell us then about the recent reports that China is considering turning the entire Tibetan plateau and the surrounding mountains into a huge national park? I don't know whether you've heard about this.
Yes,
the Third Pole National Park would be by far the biggest national park in the world, covering an area of 2.5 million square kilometres. These are the reports, but of course, as you say, this is an area with massive mineral wealth. Regardless of the merits of turning this area into a national park, and there are clearly environmental merits, can you see China turning its back on the mineral wealth in this area?
Very unlikely, but Chinese leaders should, if they don't want to listen to us, or His Holiness Dalai Lama, who everybody in the world listened to, listen to him, but it seems Chinese leaders don't want to listen to him. But they should at least listen to their own scientists, their own environmentalists. What they're saying is the ecosystem of Tibet is so fragile and so pure, so worthwhile for the whole world, that the whole of Tibetan region, Tibetan plateau, should be turned into a third pole national park. That is the report of Chinese environmentalists appealing to the Chinese government. This is how we should preserve Tibet, which means less urbanization, less population migration, right? And preserve the pristine environment of Tibet. But I doubt the Chinese companies will listen to them. If Chinese companies don't listen to them for hydropower, for minerals, for forest, then through them the Chinese leaders obviously will be bribed or bought or pressed into not listening to them. So this is a good aspiration, good effort of Chinese environmentalists, but it is a test for the Chinese leaders.
Well, Tibet today is a refuge from the type of industrialisation that we're increasingly seeing in China, a wilderness, if you like, in a country where nature is seriously under pressure, and we're also seeing an increasing impact of tourism too in Tibet. What, by the way, is the effect of tourism having on Tibet? Do we know?
It's quite a lot. And after rainforests of Brazil, the Himalayan ecosystem is the most fragile one. So Tibet's ecosystem has to be preserved. There are so many things to gain, environmentally speaking. Hence, the encouraging tourists to go to Tibet, which in a way is a good thing, because as long as you encourage conscience-able or politically correct tourists who will go stay in Tibetan hotel, Tibetan restaurant, which employs Tibetan people, then at least locally Tibetan will get employment, they will make some living. But that is not the case. 90% of the tourists are Han Chinese. And then they go, stay in Chinese hotel, eat in Chinese restaurant, and then have Chinese tour guide to show them around. right? Then I said, why go to Tibet? Why don't you go to Shanghai? Because other than altitude sickness, you won't learn much from Tibet, right? Because and then I said, why do you stay in the Tibetan hotel? This, we don't know, we don't trust Tibetans, so we are not so sure. Even if you don't trust Tibetan hotel owners, if you cannot sleep one night, how can you say we are family, you should trust us, you know?
So Tibetan tourism is not benefiting local Tibetan people, is what you're
Not
saying?
much, not much. Primary beneficiary is, again, Han Chinese travel agencies, hotel owners and restaurant owners. But then some of the Chinese tourists are quite insensitive to Tibetan culture.
Yeah.
There are some photos where Chinese tourists are climbing on statue of Buddha and stamping on what you see outside, the prayer flags, things like that. They should be quite sensitive. But as long as they are sensitive, and many are Buddhists though, and the one encouraging sign is hundreds and thousands of Chinese Buddhists are going to Tibet seeking spiritual blessings. That's welcome. And they are going there to understand Tibet. That's welcome.
Yeah.
And as long as they help Tibetan people and understand the situation in Tibet, that's all good. But, flux of Chinese, insensitive, disrespectful of the local system are contributing to only global warming or warming of Tibet.
Do you get any support from the Chinese diaspora out of China once they've left China and no longer feel that the Chinese government has control over them? Are many members of the Chinese diaspora prepared to say to you that they support the cause of Tibetan independence?
Yeah, this morning only I had a discussion with a few mainland Chinese who are in Brisbane. Once they understand the situation, they are quite supportive. Even when I was at Harvard University, I had several rounds of dialogue with Chinese. Initially, even I had a very biased view. They are Chinese, they are enemies, so we have nothing to talk about, right? But over time, as I met many good Chinese, they understand the situation in Tibet. They are supportive of human rights and freedom for Tibetan people. I have many, many friends. So there are many good-hearted, conscientious Chinese who support the Tibetan cause. And it's an irony, China is also the largest Buddhist country in the world. China has 300 to 400 million Buddhists. So it's, for them to meet with His Holiness Dalai Lama, seek his teaching is real blessing. And in fact, Chinese government is depriving Chinese Buddhists also the teachings and wisdom of the greatest scholar of Buddhism, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So there are many Chinese who are Buddhists who are supportive of Tibet people, for which we are very, very appreciative. Otherwise, tourism in itself, it's helping the GDP of Tibet, but helping more pockets of Chinese businessmen than the Tibetan people. That's not helpful.
His Holiness has intimated there mightn't be a reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. Would not that make the job of the political leader like that you are immeasurably harder? Because it seems to me that the glue that holds everything together is in the office of His Holiness. Are you guys considering that and how hard it's going to be without that glue?
Bill, I think you asked, as a spiritual person is asking a spiritual question. You should know, like Geshe-la sitting next to you, His Holiness is a trained monk, trained dialectic debater. When a journalist asks him, are you going to be the last Dalai Lama? He will say, maybe. Is the next Dalai Lama going to be a woman? Maybe. Because you can't rule out from the realm of possibilities, right? It's possible. So is next Dalai Lama going to be a woman? Yes. Or a Spanish or American? Yes. But at the end of that question, he always says, it is for the Tibetan people to decide. So Buddha of compassion, Avalokiteshvara, and Tibet cannot be separated. Dalai Lamas and Tibetan people simply cannot be separated. They are like the moon and the sun. Each depend on the other. So he is the 14th Dalai Lama. There will be 15 Dalai Lama because we, the Tibetan people, will pray, wish and appeal that he come back, and he will come back. So there will be Dalai Lama of Tibet for as long as it is needed. But His Holiness Dalai Lama is very healthy. He maintains a schedule more robust than me. So he has survived 3 generations of Chinese leaders, and he will survive this generation of Chinese leaders as well. So in his lifetime, he will return to Tibet. And he will give that Kala Chakra from Potala Palace. Billy, you will join me and dance with me together and listen to his teaching as well. So we all will feel blessed. And that will be the day when we say, again, the arc of history bend towards justice more often than not. And justice will bend towards Tibet. That will be the day. That will be the best chapter of world history. That will be the best chapter in our lifetime also. So let's hope and pray and work very hard towards that goal. So there are more Chinese in Australia than Tibetans. There are more Chinese in China than Tibetans already anyways, right? Odds were against us anyway. When you win, despite all the odds, that victory, that success is sweet. But we are Tibetans. We will take that sweetness with compassion, not with vindictiveness. So that will be a good chapter to write, Bill. So let's march together, and we will get there sooner than later. I want to get there during my term, so that I can say, oh, Tibetans, I could not bring my father, but I'm here with you all. With that note, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you.